Today we're going to be making the Glassywing scarf. This is the perfect scarf if it's your first time making a scarf as a crocheter. It's simple to follow, it's lovely and cozy and elegant, and it just is a really, really nice scarf. I hope you'll enjoy making this with me today. For the Glassywing scarf, I'm going to be using 2 skeins, 100 grams each, of Superwash Merino DK weight yarn or number 3 weight yarn from ecruyarn.ca. This is an undyed yarn. It's a lovely sort of coffee cream color and it's very affordable. I would like to purchase more from this company and actually try dyeing it myself, so stay tuned for that in a future video. This is 100% superwash wool. Look for that superwash on the label when you're purchasing a wool product. It will wash much easier and avoid felting. There's about 250 meters or 273 yards per 100 gram skein, and the needle it calls for is a 3.75 to 4 millimeter needle or hook. I'm actually going to use a 4.5 millimeter hook for this pattern because I would like it to be more of a light and fluffy scarf design. The Glassywing scarf is a beautiful but simple and elegant scarf design. Even a beginner will be able to follow along step by step with this video and create a beautiful scarf. If you're more experienced, you could just go straight to my Etsy store and purchase this pattern very inexpensively there. But if you're a beginner, or you'd like to just use the video, that's fine too. So I've wound my yarn into cakes, and I will admit it didn't do as neat a job as I would have liked. My yarn winder does fine with the worsted weight and heavier yarns, but not a super job with these finer yarns. I'd like to upgrade at some point. So if you have a suggestion for a yarn winder that works well with these lighter weight yarns, drop it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your opinions on that. I'm going to start off the Glassywing scarf with a starting chain. So what I like to say for beginners is just make a letter E with your yarn, like that. Just a small letter E. And then take your hook through the back, pick up your strand, and take it back through that loop. And when you tug on the ends, it will snug up just a little bit, like that. When I'm crocheting, I hold on to the short end, or my piece that I've already worked, between my thumb and finger, and the working yarn I put over my first and third fingers and under the second finger, like that. I'm going to start off with a chain of 35. One simple trick to make sure that your chain is not too tight is to use a slightly larger hook for your starting chain. So I grabbed a 5.5 millimeter hook here to do my starting chain, and then I'll switch back to the 4.5 after my chain is done. That way my starting chain won't be too tight and pull the one end of the scarf in more than the other end. That would be really disappointing to get to the end and find out that your very first chain was too tight. If you're following along in the pattern, we're going to row 1, which says single crochet in the second chain from the hook and each following chain to the end. So not this first loop next to the hook, but the second one. We're going to put the hook through the top side of that chain, yarn over, and notice that I put the yarn over from the back to the front, not this way. Although I guess if that's what you're used to doing, you go right ahead. But the idea is to go under the yarn, hook onto it, take it back through this loop. I find it easier if the hook side of the hook is pointed to the bottom, so it slides through easier. So through like that, you'll have 2 threads on your hook underneath the yarn again, and pull through 2. That's your single crochet. Through the chain, yarn over, pull a loop back, yarn over, go through 2. And the third one, through the chain, yarn over, pull it back, yarn over, pull through 2. The biggest mistake that beginners make is to make these too tight. And if it's too tight, like if I was pulling it tight like that, when I try and pull the next one through, it doesn't want to go through, it gets caught. So just make sure that you're relaxed about it, leave a little bit of room so you can get your hook through. On the other hand, you don't want it to be so loose that your tension is uneven and bumpy. So just practice, persevere, you will find the happy medium where your stitching is even and consistent. And if you reach that point a couple of inches into the scarf, no problem. Just pull it out and start over again. You'll be happier at the end if you've taken the time to go back and make it look the way that it should. So single crocheting in each of these chains all the way across. Just take your time, and if your thread gets caught or something wonky happens, just take your hook out, tug the yarn until it's back to a point that you recognize, put your hook back through, and try again. It's a little tricky at first when there's not a lot to hold on to yet, but it will get easier. And the last one is right there. For row 2, we are going to chain 3 and turn. The chain 3 takes the place of a double crochet. So yarn over, pull through the 1, and a second time, and a third time. So chain 3. The one on the hook doesn't count. There's 1, 2, 3 chains there. Turn it around. I turn it clockwise, I guess. So this chain 3 that's already been worked takes the place of the first double crochet. We're going to double crochet in the second stitch and in each stitch across. So where's the second stitch? Well, if you look at the top, we're not going to count our 3 chains. There's a little V at the top of each stitch. This is the first one, which is right at the base of what we were working, and this is the second one. So we're going to go into this second chain from the hook, not this one. This one's already got its place taken up by this chain 3. Those go together. So the second one here, we're going to do a double crochet, and a double crochet looks like this. Put a yarn over your hook before you go into the work, then go into that, not the first, but the second one, underneath both of those strands, okay? Underneath both sides of the V at the top. Yarn over again, pull it back, yarn over again. So now I have 3 threads on my hook. I'm going to go through 2, yarn over again, and 2 more. That's why it's called a double crochet, because you go through twice. So yarn over. Now I've got 3, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2 again. Yarn over through the next stitch here, pick one up, go through 2, and go through 2. After a while you start to see where you need to put your hook. It's just after the little bump on this side. Do you see that? So just after this little bump into this V on the top underneath both of those threads. That's where your hook needs to go. Yarn over, just past this little bump under that V, pick one up, through two, and through two. And I'm going to continue with double crochets to the end of this row. Just a little side note, if you watched my last video, you'll know that I like to name my patterns at times after Canadian moths and butterflies. So the Glassywing scarf reminded me of the little Glassywing moth, which is kind of a nondescript moth but has nice spots on its wings. And that's why this pattern is called the Glassywing pattern. At the end of row 3, your last stitch will look slightly different because you need to stitch into the third chain of your starting chain. There's no double crochet there, so just put your last double crochet into the third chain of your starting chain. Then chain 3 to get set up for row 4. And turn. Now row 4 is the row where we start to put some holes in this scarf that gives it some character. So I'm going to double crochet in the second, third, and fourth chain so that there's 4 double crochets in a row. Because of course the chain 3 counts as the first one again. Oops, third and fourth. Okay. So 4 double crochets in a row, including the starting chain. Then I'm going to make a hole by chaining 2 and skipping 2. So skip the first and the second one and go into the third one with a double crochet. And then 3 more double crochets to make a group of 4. And then another hole, chain 2, skip 2, double crochet into the third one. And I'm just going to continue that way the rest of the way across with this repeat. A space of 2 and 4 double crochets. And I'll see you at the end of the row. So here I am at the last stitch for this row, and like the previous row, I'm going to double crochet into the third chain of my starting chain. And chain 3 again. And turn. The next row is going to be a solid row of double crochets again. So after our row with the holes in it, we're going to do a solid row by double crocheting in the second double crochet and across. When you come to a chain 2 space, do 2 double crochets in that space to keep our numbers the same. So we're still going to have 34 in total at the end of this row. And 2 double crochets in the space, just going around those chain stitches. So at the end of row 5, you can see we've got a nice row of holes there and a row of double crochets. Row 6 is another row of double crochets, so we'll have 2 solid rows between each row with the holes. Okay, 6 rows are done. We can tell that by counting each of these strips. So we've got our smaller single crochet row to start with. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to make another row of holes for the 7th row, but they're going to be offset from this row. The way we do that is by doing 7 double crochets to start with. So my starting chain and then 6 more. Okay, so I've got 7 there, chain 2, and like before, skip 2, go into the 3rd one, and double crochet 4. Skip 2, chain 2, double crochet 4. When you get toward the end of the scarf, you'll find that you have 7 double crochet spaces left to finish off this side and make it symmetrical. So there's 6 and 1 in my starting chain. And there's my second row of holes. Now I'm going to do 2 more double crochet rows, double crocheting 2 double crochets in each of the spaces across and 1 in the rest. And in the following row, 1 in every one, just like we did with this row here. So I've finished 9 rows of the pattern so far, and now you know enough to finish the whole scarf. If you are new to crocheting or this is your very first scarf pattern, stop and congratulate yourself. It's worth celebrating. Good for you. So there's 9 rows. From here on out, I'm going to repeat rows 4 through 9. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So from this point to this point is my repeat. I'm just going to do that over and over to the end of the scarf, finishing off with a second double crochet row. So I am going to go sit in my easy chair and work on that for a while, and I'll come back when it's finished. So here's the Glassywing scarf, almost finished. So as I mentioned, I finished the last 2 rows with a double crochet row. So in this case, I finished with a row 9. You could finish with a row 6 if you wanted to, if you ran out of yarn or something like that. So just make it as long as it works for you. There's one small change for this last row, and that is instead of doing a chain 3 turn at the end, we're just going to do a chain 1 and turn. And then the last row will be a single crochet row across the top of these double crochets, and that way it will match the other end of the scarf and provide a spot for us to add our fringes. So I'm going to do this single crochet row, and then I will come back and show you how to add a fringe to your scarf. To make a fringe, your first decision will be how long you want the fringe to be. Because this is kind of a loose, fluffy scarf, I think it would suit it to have a fairly long fringe. So I'll need to find something to wrap the yarn around that will give me the length that I'm looking for, plus a little bit more. So I've got this notebook from the dollar store here, a hardcover book, and taking my yarn, I'm going to hold it against the notebook, or you could use a cutting board or a chunk of wood or cardboard, whatever works for you. And wrapping it around, I'm going to count how many wraps. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now I'm going to keep going, but why am I counting? Well, I know that I have 34 stitches on each end of the scarf. So if I know how many wraps I have, it will help me to know how many strands I can put in each of these stitches. So if I have 34 wraps, I know I can put one strand in each stitch. The other thing is that I want to use up the rest of the yarn that I have for this scarf. So I'll just keep wrapping until I use it all up and divide the number of wraps that I have with the number of spaces, and that will give me the most number of strands I could put for each part of the fringe. So I'm going to finish wrapping this and then I will be back to show you. I ended up with 140 wraps on my notebook here. Because I know I have 34 stitches across each end of my scarf, I have a potential of 34 times 2 spaces to put my fringes in. So that's 68 spaces. So if I take that 140 wraps that I have on my notebook here, divided by the 68 spaces, I have a little over 2. So that means I'll have 2 strands for each stitch, or 4 for every other stitch if I decide to go that way. So the next step in making the fringe is to cut the threads at one end. So there's all of my strands. I'm going to take a crochet hook. The size is not crucial, whatever works is fine. So I need to decide, do I want to do 2 in every one or 4 in every other one? I think to make it nice and flowy, I'll go with 2. And I'm going to put my hook through the first single crochet through that V at the end of the scarf, fold the strands in half, grab them at the folding point with the crochet hook, and pull them through that space. So I've got a loop like that. Then I'm going to take these strands, put my fingers through the loop and grab onto them and pull them back through like that. Now in this case I also want to hide my ending tail, so I'm going to put that through as well. Then all you do is tug on the free ends until it tightens up on that stitch of your scarf. Just like that. So one more time. Take the number of strands that you like, fold them in half, put your crochet hook through the desired stitch on the end of your scarf, pull the folded end through, grab onto the strands, the free ends, and snug it up. So now I have the first 2 segments of my fringe finished. And that's how you make a fringe. Pretty simple, isn't it? So when the scarf's all finished, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. There's my fringe all finished. I think it has a nice flowy look to it. It matches the scarf. As you can see, the edge is a little uneven from where I pulled the threads through, so I need to trim it. And I find it works well to just line it up with the edge of a table, or in this case I have some natural lines on my desk here, and I'll line it up with that. decide how long I want it to be and where my cutoff point will be. And I'm going to go back to this notebook to kind of hold my edges down and help manage the threads as I cut them. Just adds a little weight to it. And then I'm going to take my scissor and just trim along the line that I've decided. And there we go, a finished scarf fringe. I really hope you've enjoyed the process of making this Glassywing scarf. If you'd like the pattern, make sure to head over to my Etsy shop. It's available quite inexpensively there. And if you would like to see more of my videos, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate you joining me today.